My grandson yelled, "Stop singing, you sound ancient." It wasn't the first time. For years, he mocked my voice, my age, my worth. So I didn't argue. I called my lawyer. By the end of the week, I rewrote everything. The will, the house, the legacy he assumed was his. Because if respect is an heirloom, he was never meant to inherit mine. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The late afternoon light poured into the parlor like warm honey, draping across the worn oak floors and the frame of the upright Steinway Edith had polished just that morning. Her fingers moved gently over the keys, coaxing out a soft, wavering version of Shenandoah, every note floating like a breath too shy to speak fully. She wasn't singing loudly, just enough to feel it hum in her chest, to let the ghosts of melody find a way through the years and the silence. She closed her eyes, singing the line again, "Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you." Her voice, yes, thinner now than in her prime, still carried a thread of clarity, still remembered the corners of every note, even if age had softened the edges. Then came the thunder. Liam's footsteps exploded on the stairs, sharp as snare drums against the quiet rhythm of the house. She opened her eyes, hands stalling mid-phrase. He barreled into view, his phone still in hand, face lit by the LED ring mounted to his camera tripod. "Jesus, Edith, can you not?" His voice sliced through the room like static. "You sound ancient." There it was again, that word. She didn't flinch. Instead, she removed her hands from the keys slowly, deliberately, as if they had touched something now unworthy of her touch. She looked at him, his silhouette framed against the doorway in a hoodie far too expensive for someone with no job, a headset dangling from his neck. From the living room, a female laugh punctured the air. Mara. Of course. The giggle sounded canned, like someone reacting for a live chat they didn't care about. "People are watching, Edith," Liam added, adjusting his mic as if that justified the interruption. "Not trying to get haunted church grandma trending tonight?" Edith said nothing. Instead, she reached forward and gently closed the lid of the piano, the creak of the hinge sounding louder than her entire song had. Her hands lingered there for a moment longer than necessary, resting on the polished wood as if to comfort it. Liam, not getting a rise out of her, snorted and walked off, the thump of his sneakers retreating as quickly as they'd arrived. A door upstairs shut, too hard, intentionally loud. She waited a beat. From her pocket, her phone buzzed with a text. "Gloria. You still coming to choir?" Edith stared at the screen. Her reflection in the dark glass looked older than she felt, her soft white curls pinned back neatly, her face lined with years of instruction and performance, of loss and return. There were stories in those wrinkles, arcs, crescendos. Her fingers moved slowly across the keys of the phone. "Edith, I'll be there but quieter." She hit send and set the phone face down on the bench beside her. The parlor settled into silence, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the occasional muffled laugh from Liam's stream above. Her hands twitched, wanting to lift the lid again, wanting to reclaim what had just been snatched. But she didn't. Instead, she stood, spine straightening as if pulled by a conductor's unseen hand. Her gaze drifted to the photographs above the piano, her younger self in recital blacks, Gloria and her laughing on stage, Liam at 5 in a bow tie that Edith had sewn herself. She blinked once, then turned and walked to the back of the room, where a slim notebook sat tucked behind a stack of hymnals. It was soft leather, well worn, pages filled with song snippets, notations, and bits of dialogue she'd overheard over the years. But today, she opened it to a blank page. She picked up a pen and wrote, "Stop singing, you sound ancient. Liam Malone, August 14th, 4:17 p.m. She paused, tapping the pen gently against the margin, then below it. "He thinks music expires when youth does. He forgets who taught him to hum." Her handwriting, always precise, looked sharper than usual. As she closed the book, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Gloria. "Gloria. You okay?" Edith stared at it for a moment before typing. "Edith, I think so. Just realized it's time I changed my key signature." She didn't wait for a reply. Instead, she turned off the parlor light and walked toward the hallway, leaving the piano in shadow. Behind her, a single high note still rang faintly in the air. And upstairs, a live stream continued, unaware that the real performance was only just beginning. The scent of Liam's reheated takeout drifted through the house long before Edith heard his voice. General Tso's again, cheap, sticky, loud with salt. She could hear the microwave beeping as she stepped quietly into the hallway, her slippers making no sound on the worn runner. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She was only going to refill the kettle, but their voices stopped her cold. "The way her chin wobbles when she holds a note," Liam was saying, mid-laugh. "It's like watching a turkey try to belt Whitney." Mara cackled, that hollow influencer laugh Edith had come to recognize as the soundtrack of disinterest. "And that vibrato, oh my God, you could record it, loop it, and sell it as a ringtone for regret." Edith didn't move, not even to breathe. "I keep thinking she's gonna drop dead on a high note, like one final wah, and then boom, just a puff of mothballs and grief." They both laughed harder, the kind of laugh that doesn't pause to check who's listening, because it never occurred to them that she might be. Edith turned, tea forgotten. She walked back down the hall and into the parlor, keeping her posture level, her hands still. There was a precision to her silence, a grace that felt rehearsed. At the piano bench, she didn't sit. She reached for the leather notebook tucked beneath her hymnals, the same one she had used the day before. She opened it to a new page, smoothed it with one palm, and began to write. August 15th, 12:42 p.m. Kitchen. Wobbles like a turkey. Ringtone for regret. Drop dead on a high note. Each line received its own space, like a lyric waiting to be set to music. Her pen moved slowly, precisely, like carving a signature into stone. Below it she wrote, "They sing mockery in chorus, but I've trained voices stronger than theirs. I know how to make notes land and linger. I know how to be remembered." She closed the book gently, as if not to disturb the ink still drying. 15 minutes later, she was walking up the hill to Gloria's porch, the air dense with the smell of pine and honeysuckle, late summer pressing down like a warm hand. In her own hand, she carried a paper bag with 2 tall coffees from the corner cafe. No sugar, just the way Gloria liked it. Gloria opened the screen door before she could knock, her gray curls pinned up and a crossword in her other hand. "You're early," she said, stepping aside. "That usually means either choir's canceled or something needs to be said." Edith smiled and handed her the coffee. Gloria raised an eyebrow. "You bribing me?" "I'm preparing you," Edith replied softly. They sat on the wicker chairs beneath the fan. Birds chirped along the power lines like living sheet music, occasionally interrupted by the grumble of a car coming up the hill. Edith took a slow sip of her coffee, then set it down on the side table and looked straight ahead, not at her friend. "I think it's time," she said, as if announcing an intermission. Gloria paused mid-sip. "Time for what?" Edith's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Time to compose my exit." Silence sat with them for a beat. Gloria blinked, registering the full weight of the statement. "You're not ill, are you?" "No," Edith said calmly, "but some illnesses don't show up on charts." Her hand grazed her purse where the leather notebook was nestled beside her phone. Gloria leaned back slowly, her gaze narrowing. "This isn't about music. This is about Liam." Edith said nothing. She didn't need to. A breeze swept through the porch, rustling the ferns that hung in their clay pots, making the wind chimes play a mournful minor chord. "I suppose," Gloria said after a moment, "some exits deserve a standing ovation." Edith turned to her finally, "Or at least a well-timed encore." Gloria nodded, taking another long drink of her coffee as the screen door creaked slightly behind them, shifting with the wind. Edith glanced down at her phone. One new notification lit the screen. Liam just went live. She didn't open it. She simply turned the phone face down. The house was still when Edith returned, too still. No distant laughter, no muffled bass from Liam's livestream setup. Just the thick quiet of late summer pressing against the windows and the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. She slipped off her shoes at the entry and walked barefoot toward the parlor, letting the familiar creaks in the floorboards guide her path like old choreography. The light in the room had shifted. The sun had dipped lower, casting long diagonal shadows across the rug and bathing the piano in a soft, golden hush. It looked like a relic and a throne all at once. Edith approached it slowly, her fingers grazing the top as she moved past, a brief, wordless greeting. The finish was warm, well worn where her wrists had hovered for years. She let her hand trail across the closed lid, around the bench, then froze. Something new. On the far end of the piano, tucked half under a metronome, was a thick sheaf of printer paper. She picked it up. Color mock-ups, graph paper, measurements. Her name scrawled in the corner, misspelled. Edith's Room Upgrade Draft, version 3. The title made her jaw tighten. She flipped through the pages. It wasn't just redecorating, it was erasure. The sketches showed the parlor stripped of its soul, the Steinway removed, replaced by modular shelving and studio sound panels, the hymnals gone, walls painted matte black, a neon sign, Liam Malone Live, mounted where her mother's framed recital program had hung for decades. Each page was an insult drawn in lines and ink. She set the plans down carefully, as if they might burst into flame. An hour later, Edith stood in front of a glass-paneled office door beneath a polished brass sign, Harlan Doss, ESQ, Estate and Legacy Planning. The waiting room smelled faintly of leather and lemon oil, like someone had tried to clean away time itself. She didn't wait for the receptionist to announce her. Harlan glanced up as she entered. He removed his glasses, gave a half smile. Ms. Malone, to what do I owe the pleasure? She closed the door behind her with a soft click. I need to update my will. That got his attention. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Is something wrong? Quite the opposite, Edith said, settling into the seat and opening her notebook. Something's finally very clear. As he pulled out a legal pad, she handed over a typed sheet she'd prepared with Gloria's help. He skimmed it, eyebrows rising slowly. You're removing Liam from the will entirely, he said, not a question, and transferring your estate to the Appalachian Conservatory of Music. Yes, she said simply, and assigning Gloria Bennett as co-executor. Harlan tapped his pen once against the edge of his notepad. You sure about this? Edith leaned forward, her tone cool but composed. He'll hear me. One clause at a time. A long pause stretched between them. Then Harlan nodded. Let's orchestrate. By the time Edith left the office, the mountain air outside felt different, crisper, less forgiving. She inhaled deeply and walked to her car, parked in the shade beneath a dogwood tree. She sat for a moment, gripping the wheel without turning the key. There would be backlash, shock, noise, but that wasn't her concern anymore. Later that evening, Gloria sat beside her at the kitchen table, typing furiously with her readers perched halfway down her nose. Edith dictated slowly, sipping tea from a ceramic mug that had once belonged to her late husband. To whom it may concern, she began, it is with deep purpose and lasting gratitude that I bequeath my instruments, scores, and vocal library to the Appalachian Conservatory of Music. She paused. Add this next part, Gloria. So that the songs I once sang may find new breath in younger voices, ones not yet hardened by cynicism. Gloria's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. That's a punch in the ribs. Edith didn't smile. It's not meant to land softly. Gloria clicked the final period, then turned the screen toward her for approval. Want me to print a draft? Edith nodded. One for the conservatory, and one for the boy who thought a blueprint could replace a ballad. The folding chairs creaked in harmony as Edith took her place in the semicircle, the faint scent of lemon disinfectant clinging to the linoleum floors. The choir room inside the Asheville Community Center hadn't changed in years. Faded felt banners along the walls, a dusty upright piano in the corner, and the perpetual hum of the overhead fluorescents. But something in her had shifted. She set down her water bottle beside her music binder and rolled her shoulders back. The other singers chatted quietly, rustling sheet music, catching up on bridge games and grandchildren. Gloria glanced over from the alto section and raised a single questioning brow. Edith answered with a nod, measured, composed. She wasn't here to blend in. The choir director, a wiry woman named Connie with fierce eyes and a conductor's baton she treated like a wand, clapped twice to call them to attention. "All right, warm-ups. Then we'll run the solos for next week's showcase. Edith, you're still on for Skylark, right?" Edith met her gaze. "I am." They moved through scales and harmony drills, Edith's voice strong and steady, unflinching, not louder than the others, just more present. When her solo came, the room settled. Even the air felt stiller. She rose, music in hand, but didn't open it. Her fingers rested on the edges of the page, but her eyes remained forward, distant. And then she sang, the first note unfurled like silk, pure, sure-footed. Her vibrato, once the subject of mockery, shimmered with restraint, shaped by years of training, not weakness. Each phrase built upon the last, her breath controlled, each vowel round and full. Her voice didn't beg for validation, it commanded memory. By the time she reached the final line, "Won't you answer me?" the silence was reverent. Then Gloria clapped, loud, first, and longer than anyone else. Not polite applause, real, rooted, hand-stinging joy. A few others joined in, nodding, murmuring to one another. Connie smiled from behind the piano. "That's the best I've heard you in years, Edith." Edith gave a quiet, "Thank you," but didn't sit right away. She stood still, letting the last note ring through the bones of the room, her body humming with something unshakable. Not defiance. Return. At dinner that night, the spaghetti was overcooked. Liam had added too much garlic salt, again. But Edith didn't comment. She chewed quietly, pushing a napkin onto her lap, while across the table, Liam scrolled his phone with one hand and forked pasta into his mouth with the other. "So," he said, not looking up, "Gloria posted your little performance clip." Edith didn't respond. She sliced a meatball in half with slow precision. "You didn't crack today," he added, finally glancing up. "Impressive." Edith dabbed the corner of her mouth with the napkin. "Neither did my lawyer's pen." Liam froze, fork midair. She met his gaze briefly, then returned to her plate. He forced a short laugh. "Guess we're all feeling dramatic lately." She raised her glass. "Or just finally in key." He didn't reply. The next morning, she stood across a sleek, marble-topped desk from Rachel Kim at the downtown branch of Asheville Community Bank. Rachel had always treated her with an earnest, slightly star-struck warmth. She'd once admitted her mother used to play Edith's instructional cassette tapes during her vocal lessons. "Of course I can help you separate the accounts," Rachel said, flipping through a few documents. "Joint access on the house fund will be revoked, and we'll set up new designations for the estate-linked savings." "Make it sole control," Edith said. "With power of attorney removed from my grandson effective today." Rachel blinked, but nodded. "Understood. Everything okay?" Edith smiled gently. "Everything's finally being composed properly." Rachel typed briskly, her fingernails clicking softly against the keys. "I'll get you the updated forms to sign by Friday." As Edith turned to leave, Rachel called after her. "By the way, congrats. My aunt sent me your performance clip. Said she cried during the last note." Edith's steps slowed. She turned back, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Tell her the next one's already in rehearsal." She left the bank feeling lighter. Not in spite of the weight she carried, but because she had chosen it. Every note, every clause, every step. The mahogany walls of Harlan Doss's office seemed to absorb sound, like a private concert hall built for secrets. The late morning sun filtered through the blinds in angled stripes, spotlighting the legal pads, brass pen set, and a delicate crystal tumbler, half full of water, untouched. It smelled faintly of paper and aftershave. Edith sat with her back straight, her notebook resting neatly on her lap. Harlan leafed through the packet she had initialed on every page. The air between them was quiet, but not hesitant. "The changes are finalized," he said. "Once you sign here—" He turned the document toward her, uncapped the fountain pen. "Your estate will be reassigned as we discussed." Edith reached for the pen. Her hand didn't tremble, not even slightly. She signed. With one stroke, Liam was removed from her legacy. She passed the pen back and folded her hands in her lap, the way she had taught her students to sit at recitals, composed, centered, precise. "And just to confirm," Harlan said, glancing again at the addendum, "the full property, including the land, house, and any liquid assets, goes to the Appalachian Conservatory of Music?" Edith nodded. "They're building a new youth vocal wing. I'd rather my walls be used for resonance than ring lights." Harlan allowed himself the briefest of smirks. "And Ms. Gloria Bennett is named co-executor and beneficiary of the studio instruments? She knows which ones matter. She helped me pick half of them." He flipped to the next page. "And the children's nonprofit, Play Forward, you're donating the remaining instruments?" "All but the Steinway." Edith's voice was steady. "That stays in the house for now. Let them remove it when I'm no longer part of the acoustics." Harlan set the folder aside and extended a hand. "Well orchestrated, Ms. Malone." She shook it with confidence. Her palm met his with a firm, warm press. As she stepped out of the office and into the brightness of the parking lot, her shoulders dropped an inch. She could feel the shift, something inside her spine settling, like a pitch finally hitting perfect resonance. She opened her car door and paused before getting in, letting the wind tease a low hum from her throat. It turned into a tune, one of her old warm-ups. She smiled and hummed the rest of it as she drove. The house welcomed her home in quiet tones. No footsteps, no shouting, just the occasional rustle of tree branches against the roof. Liam had gone out, probably to film one of his caffeine-fueled brand therapy live streams. The silence was a reprieve. She brewed tea, sorted her mail, and made a note in her planner to call the nonprofit for pickup. On her way to the office, she passed through the parlor and paused, her hand brushing the top of the piano with a sort of farewell that felt kind. No regret, only memory. She reached the study, pulled out the hard copy draft of her estate plan Harlan had given her just in case, and slid it into the shredder drawer. She stared at it for a moment, then set her mug down to plug in the cord. A sharp knock at the front door startled her. She sighed, unplugged the shredder, and stepped into the hallway, but the knock had been brief. A delivery, probably. When she returned, the paper sat where she left it. She never turned the shredder on. That night, the sound of Liam's keys rattling in the front door broke the quiet. He moved with the clatter of someone who'd never learned to enter gently. Edith remained in her chair, legs tucked beneath her, flipping through a music anthology from 1972. Liam passed through the hallway quickly, not speaking. A good sign. But upstairs, just after 10, a sound echoed down. The low beep-beep of her old printer powering on from sleep mode, followed by the whir of a page feeding through. And then, "What the hell?" A slam. A shuffle. The sound of paper hitting hardwood. Edith didn't move. From the second floor came heavy footsteps. Then, "You wrote me out?" She closed the book on her lap with slow precision and set it on the side table. Footsteps descended, fast, uneven. He rounded the corner, face flushed, brand hoodie hanging loose, fists clutching the draft. "You actually filed this?" Edith looked up, calm. "I forgot to shred it," she said. "But yes, every word." The page in Liam's hand shook like it might combust. His breath came hard and fast, his jaw locked tight enough to rattle his molars. Edith watched him from the threshold of the parlor, one hand resting on the back of a wingback chair, steady as a metronome. "Are you serious?" he barked, voice cracking at the edges. "You actually filed this? You went behind my back and cut me out like I'm nothing?" Edith didn't flinch. "You found it. I assume you read it." He stepped forward, the draft rattling in his grip. "This is betrayal. Family's supposed to stick together, remember? Loyalty? Blood?" He jabbed the page toward her chest like a dagger. "You're throwing me away over some legacy performance complex?" She raised an eyebrow. "You're confusing family with entitlement." His eyes darted wildly, seeking something to knock over. "I lived in this house. I took care of you. You squatted in the guest room and left your dishes in the sink." His mouth opened to speak, but the doorbell rang. They both paused. The tension cracked for half a second. Edith didn't move. Liam stormed to the door, flung it open. Mara stood there in full influencer drag, oversized sunglasses, a perfectly staged ponytail, crop top printed with an ironic Bible verse. She held up her phone casually, lens glinting. "Babe," she said, her voice syrupy, "don't let her get in your head. You're the one who's viral, not her." Liam blinked, confused. "Are you recording right now?" She smiled. "People love family drama, real-time reaction content." Then, quieter to Edith, "Mind if I keep filming?" "You're trending." Edith didn't dignify it with a reply. She turned and walked toward the piano room. Behind her, Liam's voice pitched into a register even autotune couldn't fix. "You raised me. You gave me piano lessons. You used to brag about me." "And I also taught you about grace," Edith said, pausing in the doorway. It clearly didn't stick. "You don't get to pretend this isn't personal." She faced him fully now. Her tone never rose. "Respect is an heirloom too, Liam," she said. "You chose not to keep it." Mara's phone was still pointed at Edith, but now her hand faltered. Edith walked to the record player near the bookshelf, her husband's old Technics, still reliable, and gently lifted the arm. She pulled a vinyl from its sleeve, a black and gold pressing of the Irish tenors, classics and rarities. With care born of ritual, she placed it on the platter and set the needle down. Soft static, then strings. "Danny boy," filled the house like a hymn whispered through memory. Liam stood frozen in the hallway, fury still boiling behind his eyes, but the music cut through it. Mara slowly lowered her phone. The song didn't beg for attention, it commanded silence. Edith disappeared into the kitchen as the verse swelled. She moved with purpose, retrieving a parcel from the counter that had arrived earlier that day, plain brown paper tied with red string, no return address. She opened it slowly. Inside, a tin of chamomile tea, 2 sugar cookies wrapped in wax paper, and a folded stack of handwritten lyrics in Gloria's looping script. Some were old choir pieces. Others were fragments of Edith's own unfinished compositions, carefully copied by someone who knew exactly where they came from. Beneath it all, a short note. "You were never background. You were the song. G." Edith blinked once, then tucked the note into the edge of her notebook. She returned to the parlor, where the final verse of Danny Boy floated through the room. Liam stood at the edge of it all, rattled, red-faced, unmoving. He opened his mouth once more, but Edith lifted a finger. The song wasn't finished. She sat at the piano, didn't play, just listened. Let the house echo with something that didn't need her to defend it. Mara stepped back through the front door without another word. Liam followed a beat later, muttering curses under his breath, phone now forgotten in his palm. Edith stayed seated long after they left, the silence afterward deeper than anything Liam had managed to yell. The screen door slammed harder than necessary, Liam's backpack thudding against the wall as he tossed it onto the foyer floor. Edith didn't look up from the envelope she was opening, bank stationery, crisp and pale blue. Inside, a copy of the flagged withdrawal attempt, annotated in red ink. Account ending in 2019. Signature line, forged, sloppily. She folded the letter and rose, walking calmly into the hallway, where Liam was kicking off his sneakers like he still lived in a dorm. "You tried to pull $5,000 from the house account," she said flatly. He straightened, caught. "I wasn't pulling it. I was moving it. You've been acting unstable. I thought I should take over before—" "Don't." Her voice sliced clean through his excuse. "Don't insult me and commit fraud in the same breath." Liam's posture stiffened, but he didn't back down. "Look, you owe me. You're old, you're alone, and everything you have I'm supposed to inherit." Edith took a slow step forward, the envelope still in her hand. "I'm older," she said, "but I am not owed." His jaw twitched. She extended the letter to him. "The bank flagged the signature. They called me before they called the police. That's the only reason you're standing here." He snatched the paper, eyes darting across it, mouth tightening as he read. "So what? You want to press charges now?" "No," she said. "Not yet." He barked a bitter laugh. "You'd love that, wouldn't you? Send me to jail so you can die knowing you got the last word." "I don't need a cell to contain you, Liam," Edith said coolly. "You've already built your own, with ego, denial, and a shaky Wi-Fi signal." He flung the letter down and stormed past her, brushing her shoulder hard enough to be felt. She didn't move, just waited until the front door slammed again. Then she reached for her phone. Harlan met her in his office late that afternoon. This time, the mood was less ceremonial, more surgical. He reviewed the scanned documents, then set them aside with a low exhale through his nose. "We can send this to the bank's legal team," he said. "They'll flag his name and freeze access moving forward. If he tries again, it'll trigger a fraud report." "Do it," Edith said. "Quietly. I don't want fireworks, just doors that don't open." Harlan nodded. "And the power of attorney?" She slid a separate form across the desk. "Already signed, already notarized." "I've removed him," she said. "Permanently." Harlan gave her a long look, then folded the papers into a manila folder with crisp precision. "You're cleaning house." "No," she replied. "I'm rebuilding it." That night, Edith lit a single candle in the kitchen and boiled water for tea. The silence wasn't heavy, it was intentional. The way a rest in a score is marked fermata, held for effect. The doorbell rang just as she poured the water. She opened it to find Gloria on the porch, arms full of sheet music and a fresh binder labeled Edith's Showcase, Draft 1. "Before you tell me you're too tired, I'll remind you I brought lemon bars and a bottle of something that costs more than my gas bill," Gloria said. Edith stepped aside. "In that case, come in and orchestrate." Gloria set the stack down on the kitchen table and removed her reading glasses from her bag. "Listen, I've been thinking, it's time we held something more than a retirement concert. Something bigger. What do you say to a weekend choir showcase? Your arrangements, your students, your songs. Not for them," she nodded in the general direction of the guest house, "but for your legacy." Edith considered it, stirring her tea absently. "And who would conduct?" "You would," Gloria said simply. "It's not an encore, Edith. It's your headliner." Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a train moaned low against the Blue Ridge. Edith closed her eyes. "I'll start composing tomorrow." The morning air smelled like rain before it arrived, sweet, electric, and full of promise. Edith stood at the base of the guest house steps with a sealed envelope in her hand and a paper-thin calm wrapped around her shoulders like a shawl. She didn't knock. She didn't call his name. She just waited. The door opened seconds later as if he'd sensed her arrival. Liam stood barefoot, hoodie half-zipped, a protein shake clutched lazily in one hand. His eyes were puffy, sleep-deprived, or maybe just tired of the sound of himself. "Let me guess," he said with a smirk. "Another dramatic announcement?" Edith handed him the envelope. "It's not dramatic. It's legal." He opened it without ceremony, scanning the single page inside. The color drained from his face like it had somewhere else to be. 30 days, he said, incredulous. "You're evicting me?" "I'm reclaiming my space," she said evenly. "You've had years of rent-free rehearsal time. Consider this your closing act." He laughed, a loud, bitter cackle that rang out into the yard. "You wouldn't survive without me around. You think you're strong enough to live here alone?" "I already am." He stepped closer, trying to tower. "You seriously think you're going to fill this house with music and legacy and whatever other senior citizen fantasy you're composing in there?" "I don't think," Edith said. "I know." She turned and walked away, the dew still clinging to the grass as her footsteps faded toward the main house. Liam stood frozen on the porch, eviction notice fluttering slightly in his grip like it wanted to escape him too. 3 days later, Gloria arrived in a burst of laughter, confetti, and a grocery store sheet cake decorated in blue frosting and shaped like a padlock. "Happy untenanting!" Gloria read aloud from the cake's inscription, cackling as she set it on the kitchen table. "I told them it was a divorce party, technically not a lie." Edith smiled as she lit a candle. "Just one. No point wasting matches. I'm not celebrating his exit. I'm celebrating the vacancy." They cut into the cake with oversized forks and unfiltered delight. By the third bite, Edith's laughter was lighter than it had been in months. Later, they moved through the guest house with brooms, rags, and open windows. Edith carried a small bundle of fresh lilacs from her garden, placing them in a chipped vase by the window Liam had always kept covered with blackout curtains. Sunlight poured in, kissing the hardwood. Dust motes danced like applause. She peeled off the LED ring light still suctioned to the mirror. It came off with a soft pop, leaving behind a perfect circular imprint, ghost evidence of artificial brightness. "What's the plan for this space?" Gloria asked, wiping down a bookshelf. "A reading room," Edith said. "A real one. No ring lights, no noise." Gloria nodded. "Silence with purpose. I like it." A few days later, Edith sat in Rachel Kim's office, the late afternoon sun glinting through the glass. Rachel tapped on her keyboard while sipping an iced coffee, the tip of her pen between her teeth. "All protections are finalized," she said. "Separate accounts, locked down estate access, and full reporting protocols in place. If anyone so much as breathes near your funds, I'll hear it." Edith smiled. "I'm glad one of us has good ears." Rachel grinned. "You've got good instincts. Those last longer." She handed over the paperwork, neatly stapled and color-coded. Edith slipped it into her leather binder without hesitation. It felt heavier in her hands, but in the way sheet music feels when you already know the melody. That night, the guest house smelled like lavender and pine cleaner. Edith stood at the doorway, surveying the cleared shelves, the vase of lilacs, the humming quiet. It was no longer a stage for entitlement. It was hers again. She closed the door softly behind her and returned to the main house just as her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You don't get to shut me out like this. I have proof. I'll make you regret it." No name. But the tone sang a familiar, sour note. Edith tapped the play button. The video opened with grainy footage, her own living room slightly off-center. Her voice, measured and quiet, could be heard saying, "Respect is an heirloom too, Liam. You chose not to keep it." Then silence, then laughter. Not hers. She stopped the recording. The email from Rachel had been simple. "This was forwarded to our fraud team by an anonymous source, likely tied to the inquiry from Liam's account." Edith closed her laptop, reached for her phone, and dialed Harlan. "Let him file," Harlan said calmly, flipping through a legal pad with a practiced flick of his pen. "A lawsuit over disinheritance would fall apart in minutes. You followed procedure. Your will is airtight." They sat in his office again, morning light spilling in through the blinds. Edith wore a soft gray shawl and brought no notebook this time. Just resolve. "And the footage?" she asked. "He's clearly threatening to use it, or worse, sell it." Harlan shrugged. "In North Carolina, you're allowed to record your own conversations without notifying others. Ethically murky, legally meaningless. No court will touch it, especially not with the forgery attempt on file." Edith sipped her tea. "Then let the silence do the talking." Harlan smirked. "Elegant strategy, very you." Back at the bank, Rachel stood by the printer, watching the pages slide out one by one. "These are all access logs," she said, tapping the top page. "Since the flag was activated, no one but yous come near the accounts. If Liam even breathes in their direction, I'll know." "Print them weekly," Edith said, "and alert me immediately if anything changes." Rachel nodded. "Anything else?" Edith smiled faintly. "Yes. Could you also recommend a good pen? Something memoir-worthy." Rachel's grin widened. "Let me guess. You're finally writing it?" The new notebook was leather-bound, deep burgundy, with faintly gilded edges and paper thick enough to feel sacred. On the inside cover, she wrote in smooth cursive, "Voice Lessons from Silence" by Edith Malone. And beneath it, "For every woman ever called too much by someone not enough." She wrote the first page that afternoon in the quietest room of the house, formerly Liam's. Now it smelled like lilacs and open windows. She began with a memory of her mother humming scales as she folded laundry. Not remarkable, not dramatic, just real. And it was hers. A week later, the choir room buzzed with energy. Connie, the director, stood at the front holding a flyer. "Legacy and Harmony, a weekend with Edith Malone." "You didn't tell me this many people RSVP'd," Edith murmured to Gloria as more chairs were added to the back row. "I didn't," Gloria said, winking. "The music did." When the rehearsal began, the sopranos sang Edith's arrangement of simple gifts, her phrasing, her dynamics, the rest's placed just so. Halfway through, someone began to cry. Connie stopped, turned to the altos. "Who's breaking pitch?" Gloria raised her hand, dabbing her eyes. "It's not the notes," she said. "It's the damn timing." After rehearsal, she pressed a gift into Edith's hand, a vintage wooden metronome, chipped at the corner but still ticking. "Time's still yours," Gloria whispered. Edith held it to her chest. It felt like a heartbeat. 3 days later, everything fractured again. It started with a notification. Trending. Voice like vinegar. Leaked footage of retired choir teacher goes viral. Edith clicked. The clip opened with Mara's voice. "Watch this. Classic guilt trip move. Watch how she tries to act noble." Then the argument. Liam yelling, Edith standing firm. The line about entitlement. The way Mara zoomed in on Edith's face when she said, "You've already built your own cell." Edith's jaw clenched. Beneath the clip, the blog caption read, "Exclusive. Influencer couple exposes toxic matriarch, but public backs her." She didn't scroll the comments. She didn't need to. Her phone buzzed again. "Gloria, you seeing this?" "Yes." "And?" Gloria asked. "I think I'll let the internet sing its own verse," Edith said. The second clip hit harder than the first. It began mid-laugh. Mara's this time, high-pitched and smug as she whispered, "She's like a ghost that never stopped singing." Then came Liam's voice, unmistakable, mocking Edith's vibrato with cruel accuracy, mouth puckered, chin trembling like jello in an earthquake. He cackled at his own imitation. "I swear, I thought she was going to die on that note. One final breath and then, pfft, straight to the nursing home," he sneered. The video cut to Mara pointing the camera toward herself, smirking. "Who even sings anymore?" It's not the 1800s. By mid-morning, it had 3 million views. By lunch, the hashtag elegant singer was trending. Edith didn't watch the full clip. She didn't need to. She sat in the sunroom, the morning light slanting across the hardwood, sipping Earl Grey and listening to Debussy on low volume. When Gloria burst in through the kitchen door, waving her iPad like a fan, Edith merely raised an eyebrow. "You are an icon," Gloria declared. "Twitter thinks you're a myth. TikTok is doing edits, and a jazz podcast called you a postmodern martyr with pitch control." Edith snorted. "That's not even a musical term." "Doesn't matter," Gloria said, dropping into the armchair opposite her. "You're the elegant singer who refused to crack? That clip of you saying, 'Respect is an heirloom too'? They've turned it into a ringtone." "That did it." Edith laughed, really laughed. It started as a small, incredulous giggle, then burst into something larger, breathier, full-throated. She laughed until she was dabbing her eyes with a cloth napkin, and Gloria was gasping for air beside her. "I haven't laughed like that since before Harold died," Edith finally said, catching her breath. "Well," Gloria replied, grinning, "Harold didn't have a YouTube tribute compilation with piano overlays and violins?" Edith rolled her eyes but smiled. "He wouldn't have stood for any of this." "No," Gloria said, "but he would have been damn proud." Liam's accounts were gone by nightfall. First his TikTok vanished, then Instagram, then his channel. One by one, like dominoes tipped by shame. Someone captured a live stream meltdown before he deleted it, sweaty, unfiltered, pleading with his followers to understand. "That video wasn't supposed to go public. It's edited. He cut himself off. His subscriber count dropped in real time. No one saved him this time, not even Mara. 3 days later, Edith sat at her parlor piano, surrounded by the warm hush of early evening. She adjusted the angle of her webcam, fixed a soft light to the bookshelf, and opened the live stream. She didn't announce it, no hashtags, no countdown. Just a quiet title, Impromptu, Night Music with Edith. She played Chopin. No vocals, just hands. Clear, confident, unhurried. Viewers trickled in slowly, then flooded. Hearts and roses floated across the screen. Comments popped up in gentle rhythm. "She plays like breath. My grandmother taught me this piece. This is what healing sounds like. Please don't stop." She didn't look at the screen once, just played and played until the light dimmed and the room glowed with a kind of earned stillness. When she finished, she simply closed the piano lid and said, "Thank you," to no one in particular, then signed off. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Rachel stood there, a coffee in one hand, a small lavender envelope in the other. "Didn't want to email this one," she said. "Figured it deserved a proper delivery." Edith raised an eyebrow, taking the envelope. "It's from a girl in Charlotte," Rachel added. 15. Calls herself Cadence. Saw your stream. Says you changed her life. Inside was a handwritten letter in purple ink. "Dear Ms. Malone, I didn't know music could feel like armor until I heard you play. I'm scared all the time, but you reminded me that fear can still be graceful. Please don't stop singing, even if it's just to yourself. Some of us are listening. Love to Cadence." Edith folded the letter gently and tucked it into the front page of her memoir notebook. The knock came just before dusk, soft and uneven. Edith paused mid-sentence, pen hovering over the final word in a paragraph about breath control and heartbreak. She didn't move immediately. Outside, the cicadas had begun their nightly concert, and the air smelled of honeysuckle and thunder. The knock came again. 3 quiet taps. She opened the door to find Liam standing there, thinner, older, not in years, but in posture. His hoodie hung off his frame, eyes shadowed, a crumpled apology barely contained in his expression. "I was stupid," he said, before she could say anything. "I was young, mean, and scared." Edith studied him for a long moment, then opened the screen door wider. "Take your shoes off," she said quietly. He obeyed without question, stepping into the familiar warmth of the house, barefoot on the hardwood. The scent of lemon oil and lavender wrapped around him like a blanket he hadn't earned. She led him without a word down the hallway, past the parlor, into the music room. The one that used to be his. The one that now breathed silence and order and light. A vase of lilacs still bloomed on the windowsill. She sat at the upright piano and gestured for him to stand near. Then she played. It was slow, gentle, simple, a lullaby in G major. One she used to hum as she brushed his hair back from his forehead when he was 6, scared of the dark and full of questions about death and music and why cats didn't like him. He had loved that song then. He didn't move now. She played it through once. No words, no improvisation. Just the notes as written, as remembered. The melody floated like dust, old but unbroken. When she finished, she kept her fingers resting on the keys for a breath. Then she closed the lid. The click of it echoed more loudly than the final chord. "That's what you lost," she said. He blinked, throat moving but no sound coming. Outside, headlights flashed in the window. Gloria's car waited at the curb, engine idling. "I'm not angry anymore," Edith said, rising from the bench. "But forgiveness isn't a ticket. It's just a seat left empty in case someone decides to come back with better intent." He opened his mouth again, still nothing. "I have a concert to plan," she said, stepping past him. "Your name isn't in the program." His shoulders sagged as if something inside him gave way. Gloria stood beside her car, door open. She didn't wave, just nodded once, like a final cue from the wings. Liam stepped onto the porch. He looked back, once, then walked into the growing twilight without a word. The tea was already steeped when Liam arrived. Edith had set the table with quiet intention. Chamomile in her grandmother's china, shortbread arranged on a cracked porcelain plate, cloth napkins folded to the left. The sun draped the dining room in late afternoon gold, casting long shadows from the silver spoon that hadn't been used in years. She heard his hesitant knock and opened the door without pause. He stood straighter than before, cleaner somehow, less hoodie, more collared shirt, ironed with effort but still unsure. His hands were empty. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. He followed her into the dining room without speaking. When he saw the table, his brow furrowed. "You didn't have to make this ceremonial." "I did," Edith said, pouring the tea. "Because this is a performance, too. Just a quieter one." He sat, waited. She opened a slim folder beside her cup, slid the document out, and adjusted her glasses. Her voice was steady, clear, and unconcerned with audience. "I, Edith Malone, being of sound mind and recently sharpened pen, do hereby declare this to be my final will and testament." Liam flinched at the formality. She continued, The property known as 419 Sycamore Hill Road shall be transferred in full to the Appalachian Conservatory of Music to be converted into a teaching and recording space for under-resourced youth musicians. He stared at the rim of his teacup. All liquid assets, she went on, are to be allocated into a scholarship fund managed jointly by the Conservatory and Gloria Bennett for young artists without financial backing or familial support. A pause. He blinked hard. My vintage instruments, except the Steinway, have already been donated to Play Forward, a non-profit committed to music therapy and youth outreach. Another pause. He opened his mouth, but she lifted a hand gently, like a conductor halting an early cue. One item, she said, her voice softening, has been left to my grandson, Liam Charles Malone. She reached into a velvet-lined box on the table and removed a tarnished tuning fork. The stem was worn, the handle slightly bent, its pitch long dulled. She placed it between them. You used to carry this in your backpack during recitals. Said it made you feel professional. His throat moved. He didn't touch it. I leave this to you, Edith said, so you never forget that you once had perfect pitch, and somewhere along the way, forgot how to listen. She waited. The silence stretched like a final chord held too long. Then she stood. I thank you, she said, voice steady, for reminding me how sharp I could still be. Gloria appeared from the hallway clutching 2 glasses of sparkling cider and a single flute of Prosecco. She raised hers high. To freedom, she said, in 4/4 time. Edith clinked glasses. Liam didn't reach for his. They drank. Liam stood slowly, then tucked the tuning fork into his pocket without a word. He looked at Edith, then Gloria. Something passed through his expression, not regret, not pride, just recognition. Then he left. The screen door clicked shut behind him with a soft finality. Later that evening, Edith wandered her garden with her phone in hand, soft strains of Satie echoing from the speaker as she brushed her fingertips along the late blooms. The air smelled like mint and freshly turned earth. The lilacs were nearly out of season, but still blooming stubbornly. Gloria stood on the porch, watching her. You didn't have to give him anything, she called. I gave him the only note he knows how to hold, Edith replied. The one that slipped. Gloria smiled. So what's next? Edith looked up at the sky. Maybe I'll learn how to grow something that isn't a metaphor. They laughed softly. The blue ribbon shimmered like a stream of music frozen mid-note. It stretched across the double doors of the new performance wing, anchored on either side by brass stands and tension. The banner overhead red in gold, the Edith Malone Vocal Arts Hall. Sunlight caught the lettering just right. For a moment Edith could almost hear it, her name, not spoken, but sung by the building itself. A harmony stitched into brick and echo. Gloria stood beside her, sunglasses perched in her curls, one hand gripping a bouquet, the other resting gently on Edith's elbow. You ready? Gloria whispered. Edith gave a small nod. I taught 1,000 people how to breathe through nerves. I suppose it's time I follow my own lesson. The crowd outside the Appalachian Conservatory swelled with local press, faculty, former students, and strangers who only knew her as the elegant singer. Somewhere, a camera crew adjusted their boom mic as a cellist from the youth ensemble tuned under a canopy. The director of the conservatory cleared his throat at the podium. We dedicate this hall to a woman whose voice not only carried through concert halls, but through generations. Ms. Edith Malone, will you do the honors? A gold-plated pair of scissors was placed in her hand. Edith stepped forward, heart full but unshaken. With one clean snip, the ribbon fluttered to the ground. Applause followed, not explosive but heartfelt, a standing ovation waiting in restraint. Inside, the new hall smelled of sawdust and varnish, still not yet broken in, but the acoustics were alive. A low hum from a nearby tuning fork rang longer than expected, dancing across the ceiling and back. She felt the sound in her ribs. On stage, she stood alone beneath the soft spot of a white light. A hush fell over the audience like a velvet curtain being drawn. She looked out, not to the crowd, but to the back, where a man stood alone against the wall. Liam. No camera, no phone, just him, in a dark blazer too stiff for comfort, his face pale under the recessed lights. He stood still, arms crossed tightly, not defensively, but to hold something in. Gloria saw him, didn't flinch, didn't speak. Edith faced the microphone. No music, no piano, just her voice. She sang "The Water is Wide," unaccompanied. The melody rose, slow and haunting. Each word rang like it had waited years to be sung in exactly this space, on exactly this day. There were cracks in her tone, earned ones, not signs of age, but proof of use. She reached the final line. "And love grows old and waxes cold and fades away like morning dew." Silence followed. And then applause, relentless, a full standing ovation, from the back row to the orchestra pit. Edith didn't bow. She just placed her hand gently over her heart, then left the stage, passing Gloria with the same look they'd once exchanged backstage in college. Silent, complete understanding. Outside, in a quiet hallway lined with practice rooms, she paused to catch her breath. Rachel Kim stood there with a soft smile and a manila folder under one arm. "That was everything," she said. Edith gave a grateful nod. It felt like a final verse. Rachel opened the folder, producing a weathered notebook, leather-bound, the pages curled at the corners. "Your songbook," she said gently. "We found it in a storage drawer you'd labeled Someday. It's signed, indexed, but it wasn't left to anyone in the estate documentation." Edith's brow furrowed as she accepted the notebook. Her name was inked in looping, precise cursive across the first page. She flipped through it, songs that had never been recorded, lyrics written on sleepless nights, drafts of lullabies, one marked for Gloria, but never sent, another simply titled August Rain, 3 a.m. Rachel cleared her throat. "We weren't sure if that was intentional." "It wasn't," Edith said quietly, her voice caught, not with emotion, but with decision. She clutched the book gently, as if it had just remembered it belonged to her. The velvet was Gloria's idea. "You can't just toss it in a manila envelope," she said, holding up a bolt of deep plum fabric like she was unveiling royalty. "This isn't postage, it's ceremony." Edith didn't argue. The songbook, weathered, ribbon-tabbed, stained faintly by age and ink, rested in its place on the dining room table, surrounded by silence and specks of afternoon dust. She'd spent the morning flipping through it one last time, fingers grazing pages as if reading braille made of memory. She paused at the composition titled August Rain, 3 a.m., her pencil markings faint and urgent in the margins. Shift breath here. Let the note ache. Don't resolve too quickly. It wasn't grief she felt holding the book, not nostalgia either. It was clarity, as if she'd been the archive and the archivist all along. "I'm auctioning it," she said softly, as Gloria folded the velvet around the book like a prayer. "Anonymously." Gloria blinked. "Wait, what?" Edith folded a handwritten letter, unsigned, into the wrapping. "I want the music to outlive the name. Let someone else give it breath." "And the proceeds?" "To fund scholarships." She met Gloria's eyes. "But not just for singers. For anyone who was told they were too much, too strange, too off-key." Gloria's smile was slow and proud. "You're rewriting your legacy with a quieter pen." Edith tied the velvet shut with a silk ribbon. Burgundy. That night, as thunder rolled over the ridges and the house creaked like it was remembering its own history, Edith's phone lit up with a voicemail notification. From Liam. Time 10:46 p.m. She stared at it for several minutes before pressing play. His voice was rough, hesitant. "I saw the foundation page, the auction, the songbook." A pause. "It's brilliant. Of course it is. You always were." Another pause, longer this time. "I was wrong, about almost everything, and I don't want anything from you anymore, I swear. I just wanted to say," a breath, "I'm proud of you, even if I failed you." Click. Edith didn't replay it. She didn't save it. She tapped delete. The silence that followed didn't feel empty, it felt clean. The day of the concert arrived wrapped in anticipation. A golden banner stretched above the auditorium doors. Legacy and Harmony, a tribute to the works of Edith Malone. Inside, the choir, spanning ages, voices, and stories, stood ready under warm lights. Some wore gowns, some wore jeans. All of them wore the gravity of a melody that wasn't just being sung but inherited. Gloria stood in the front row, holding a baton. She'd insisted on conducting this one. The opening notes began a cappella. Home is where the music ends, where silence holds its breath, where every echo bends and blends, with lullabies and death. Edith sat in the third row, one hand resting lightly on the armrest, her spine straight, her eyes unblinking. She didn't mouth along, she listened entirely. Let the harmonies strike her unguarded. The final verse layered like mist, so let the windows hum again, let doors swing soft and wide. If home is where the music ends, then leave the song inside. A hush, then applause. Startled, tearful, raw. The kind that didn't just honor sound, but the silences that followed. Rachel found her after, gently slipping an envelope into Edith's palm. "The auction closed," she whispered. "It sold." Edith raised an eyebrow. "For how much?" Rachel smiled. "Enough to sponsor 20 students for 5 years." Edith's lips parted, but no words came. "Want to know who bought it?" Rachel asked. Edith shook her head. "No," she said, "let them teach it how to sing." The house no longer echoed. It harmonized. Edith walked the halls barefoot, the pads of her feet tracing years into the grain of the floor. Her hum was barely a melody, more like a thread of sound woven into the walls, catching where pictures used to hang, lingering in corners where arguments once stalled. Each room held its own pitch now. The kitchen still sang in mezzo-soprano, warm and sharp around the edges. The guest room, once Liam's, then lavender-scented and book-lined, was soft alto, filled with minor chords of silence. And the music room? That was the soprano. Untouched, unapologetic. 2 cardboard boxes sat at the front door, one marked Keep, the other Lake. Next to them, a battered cello case and a canvas tote filled with loose manuscript paper, tea bags, and a paperback on botany. Gloria had already made 2 trips to the car, humming the bass line of Simple Gifts under her breath as she went. "You sure you don't want the metronome?" she called from the porch. Edith ran her hand over the lid of the piano. "It belongs here," she said. "Let the next girl learn timing from it." Gloria reappeared in the doorway, out of breath but smiling. "You know, most people your age don't start over. They wind down." Edith turned, holding her keys between 2 fingers. "That's because most people mistake rest for retirement." They shared a look that didn't need translation. Edith crossed the threshold one last time. She paused beside the stairs, tracing the spot where her late husband's framed diploma had once hung, and smiled faintly. The wall bore no mark. Time had polished even the grief away. Behind her, the movers arrived, young voices laughing, chattering, conservatory staff and students carrying in music stands, framed art, a wall calendar already pinned with concert dates. The house was being filled again. Not with family, with purpose. She walked through them like a conductor through tuning strings, acknowledged with nods, but undisturbed. Her role wasn't central anymore, and that, she realized, was the point. In the foyer, one of the younger students, a girl no older than 15, earbuds looped around her neck, stood reverently before the upright piano. "Is anyone allowed to play this yet?" she whispered to a nearby teacher. "Not until it's blessed," the teacher replied with a wink. The girl turned to Edith, sheepish. "Will you bless it?" Edith chuckled softly. "I already did, years ago, every time I said again but slower." The girl nodded solemnly, then sat, brushing her fingers across the keys like they might vanish if she struck too hard. Edith stepped outside, the wind pulling gently at her scarf. The sun glinted off the car roof where Gloria waited with the doors open. The boxes were loaded. Only the cello remained in Edith's hand. She stood at the curb and turned back. The house stood tall, open-doored, and echoing with footsteps. The piano hadn't yet played its next note, but it would. She approached the door one last time. Inside, the girl at the piano began a scale, tentative at first, then more sure. Edith paused beside the frame, reached into her coat pocket, and pulled out the brass house key. She pressed her lips to it, a final blessing, then placed it on the shelf by the door. She sang softly, Home is where the music ends. Her voice carried up the stairs, curled through the rafters. Then leave the song inside. With the cello cradled under one arm, she pulled the door shut behind her. Gentle, firm, final. Click. She turned the lock. In the car, Gloria handed her a thermos. "You didn't cry?" "I don't cry for things I've finished well," Edith replied, fastening her seatbelt. They drove in silence for a while, the mountains unfurling beside them like old sheet music, full of rests and crescendos and turns no one warned you about. At the edge of the lake, the cottage waited. White-shuttered, ivy-laced, half the size and none of the burden. They parked. As Edith stepped out, the breeze caught her scarf and spun it upward, then let it fall. She smiled, then whispered, mostly to herself. "He silenced my song, so I turned it into a solo.